As we moved out of the tropics, generally we had to develop increasingly lighter or depigmented skin to allow more UVB to penetrate. Ultraviolet radiation is a real two-edged sword. It actually breaks down folate.
What's folate?
Folate is a vitamin that belongs to the B vitamin group, and it's needed for production of DNA in the body. So folate is monumentally important for all processes in the body that require new DNA and cell division.
So this is the balancing act.
That's right. Human skin color is a balancing act between shielding the body from the mostly harmful effects of ultraviolet radiation while allowing just a little bit of sort of good ultraviolet radiation to penetrate the skin, to make vitamin D. So that's where the balancing act comes in.
So, if you're near the equator, human skin is dark.
Right.
If you get farther from the equator, human skin gets lighter.
That's right.
As we balance. But then when I look at this map, there's some unusual patterns.
There are some interesting exceptions, and one of the most important exceptions is in the New World, especially in equatorial parts of Peru and the Andes and Chile. These people are moderately dark, but not nearly as dark as we would predict, probably for a few good reasons. Humans didn't get to this part of the New World until maybe 15 or 20,000 years ago.
It's just the other day.
It's just really the other day. And so the recent migrants, plus when they migrated here, they came with lots of gear. They had clothes on. They were able to make shelters. They had lots of sophisticated ways to buffer themselves against the environment.
Hey, a white dude has lighter skin, right? Because they live where the sun doesn't shine much, like Scotland and Germany and Sweden. You know, they up there just begging the sun. Oh, please, please, sun, shine on me so I can make some vitamin D. Oh, please, please, I can get vitamin D in a cold place like this. And now see a black dude's like, hey, son, I got melanin, all right? Bring it on, bring all the sunshine you want.
What is this business of the founder effect?
What's really interesting is that founder effect is basically happens in any population of organisms when the population size is reduced greatly. And so your gene pool is cut. Now, why that's interesting in human evolution is that at various times in our history, humans either moved around in small groups or their populations were reduced to very small numbers as a result of environmental change. Remember that a lot of modern human evolution occurred during the real tough times of the last ice age or the penultimate ice age.
I don't remember it so well, but I think they were tough times.
They were very tough times. Our species went through some extraordinary population bottlenecks at that time. Some populations were eliminated entirely, but others would have survived with just a few founders. And so this becomes a major factor in understanding modern human evolution, because not only do we have adaptations to the environment, but you have this constriction of the gene pool occurring at various times that resulted perhaps in some of the more unusual characteristics of humans that we don't really quite understand. For instance, in Asian populations, the appearance of the so-called mongoloid eye fold that distinguishes many East Asian populations. Now, there have been some explanations offered that that eye fold protects from strong winds, but it's also easy to imagine that that's a characteristic that might have evolved early in the population history of East Asian humans, and that population then becomes the founding population for all of the rest of East Asians that have that characteristic. You've got a classic Northern European physiognomy. You have a very Northern European skull. Very narrow.
Okay, look, I'm very attached to it, okay? You're not going to get it right now.
Don't worry, we won't put you in the specimen container quite yet.
Quite yet. In almost every one of your cells, you have some of this. Not paper, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the famous double helix, the molecule that provides all the information to make a living thing, like you or me. And there are a lot of instructions. If your DNA were this wide and it could be uncoiled, it would stretch halfway around the world, from New York City to Perth, Australia. Amino acids are arranged on the DNA molecule like rungs on a ladder. And using careful techniques, scientists have figured out the order or sequence of the rungs. Now, certain sequences, certain pieces of the DNA are what we call genes. And genes do an important thing. They provide the instructions for making proteins. See, you're made of proteins. Your bones, muscles, and skin, even your blood cells, are all made with instructions that come from your genes, which are pieces of your DNA molecule. And that includes you, pal.
In this tube is your DNA, which we prepped from the blood that we drew this morning. This is your genetic code in one tube.
So we're going to sequence the markers.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to find out how long your stretch of DNA is in the region of several markers.
And then what will that tell us?
That'll tell us exactly what you've inherited from your parents in those regions, and also maybe your continent of origin.
My continent of origin.
Exactly, yeah.
Is carried around in my DNA, carried along without really changing anything.
Exactly.
This is the sequencer.
This is the sequencing machine, yeah. So the pieces of your DNA, which were amplified, are in this tray now, and I'm going to put them on this machine. This machine separates the DNA based on size, and then we can visualize it on the computer screen.
DNA is like a cookbook. There are recipes that you count on. You use them all the time. But then there are other recipes, page after page of them, that you never use. They're just taking up space between the important ones. Now, our DNA seems to be the same way. There are sequences that make proteins, but most of our DNA doesn't seem to do anything. It's like unused recipes. And we call this junk DNA. Now, one of the things it doesn't do is kill you. See, if you've got a recipe that doesn't work, you throw it out. Well, if you have DNA sequences that are making proteins that are doing things wrong, well, you end up with an individual that can't survive. But the junk DNA that isn't doing anything wrong. So there isn't any evolutionary reason for it to go away. It sticks around. And our ancestors passed these junk DNA sequences from generation to generation. And these sequences can provide clear clues as to who our ancestors really were.
What we did, as you recall, was take a little bit of your blood. We took a little bit of DNA out of that blood, and Vanessa sequenced several bits of genomic DNA from you.
Dr. King's lab has data for DNA sequences from populations around the world. They represent indigenous populations, people who have been living in one place for a very long time.